Now we're on the bottom plate of the base, and this is an advertisement for Barnell's screwdrivers. I get these for gunsmithing, and they have every diameter and every thickness you could possibly want, because you want to have a blade that fits. And so this is actually standing up in here because it's just the right size. It wobbles that much and engages it. It's not a loose fit in there, so that means your screws don't get worse. And with those parallel surfaces at the end of the screw blade, you keep your screws in good condition and you get a lot of force. So I'm going to remove all these 4 screws and we'll show you what's inside. I've never been inside a Power Guide 2 before this moment. These screws are substantially longer because of the thicker plate, longer than the normal screws, and this is that thicker plate. And so there's no big surprises. We've got the plastic connector that engages here. The base plate is machined out to provide the added depth that this motor here seems to require, and everything unplugs nicely so that I can actually unplug the base plate from the base without having to remember, and I do it gracefully on camera, of course. Things are a little tight here. There we go. Okay. Set aside for cleaning, which it doesn't much need. And then finally, to remove the motor, just like every Questar motor, there are 2 screws, and I know I've got a screwdriver that fits those. The important thing to know on a typical Questar, you can see where these 2 screws holes come up here. This is at a lower level than that screw. This screw, well, it looks like it probably is the same length. In most Questars, those 2 screws are of different lengths, and you want to get them in the right place. Otherwise, you'll have this one sticking up and scratching on the Teflon disc, or this one having inadequate engagement with the hole. Maybe not an issue here, we'll see, but just be conscious of that concern with virtually every Questar scope. So now we're unscrewing the motor screw. Breaks free nicely. I used the screwdriver that's 1 thickness smaller than the one that didn't fit, and that's the normal practice. And out it comes. Doesn't look very much different. It's just it's a low voltage motor instead of a AC motor, and it engages that drivetrain that's in that lower housing. And I do notice a little bit of oil, or that would qualify as oil, also in that machined flat surface in the housing. Looks like they really had to machine away as much as possible to get the height for this, and they bought a little bit of space in the base and a little bit of space in the base plate by making room for this taller motor. Also, incidentally, those 2 screws were the same length in this particular model. You'll also see that there are 4 of these holes here. Those are those 4 plastic pips that hold up that support the bottom surface of the right ascension ring, and I'm just going to use my pin punch and a little mallet to tap those out, because then I'll be easier to clean things, and they're easy to put back. And here are the 4 little T-shaped support pips, and a little gummy with grease that I'm not planning to replace. So we now have a stripped down to the bone base. The only thing that's not part of the original machine casting is this central steel hub that's been presumably press fit in there, and I suspect that this is part of that on the bottom end. You can see the threaded apertures here for the ends of the tabletop legs, and the threaded aperture here for the center tabletop leg. We have this hole here is where that's the motor pinion goes there. The 4 holes for the ring support pips, 2 threaded holes for the motor mount screws, 3 apertures here that I cannot explain, and I don't recall having seen those before. So those may be fixturing holes that were used in the manufacturing process. We've got our 4 screw holes here for the base plate, and these holes here that are associated with the leg holes, the side leg holes. Those have unthreaded and blind holes. If you wanted to, or if you had an older model, those would be threaded, and the leg hole plugs would have a threaded screw. Those you could screw those into there, and that would provide a way to hang this onto the window of a car door if you were inclined to that sort of deployment. And so now this is ready to be cleaned, polished, possibly sanded before polishing, and I'll just have to evaluate that. It's in very good condition. There are no dents, a few little scratches that I might live with. But this one I might want to make my best polishing restoration. It has, just as you can see here by the way that the highlight picks up, obviously you're going to get a reflection from that pinpoint light, but what you get out here, that's it still has some machining or finishing marks there, and seen up very close, if you can, I may want to take those out and do a full best case concours level finishing job on this, especially if I'm going to be controversial enough to polish the edges of these forks, which Questar for years was polishing, and then they use a brushed finish in the modern ones. I prefer the polished, and I may be crazy to mess with a 50th anniversary commemorative model and change its aesthetic, but it's mine, so we'll see what I decide on that. And so the nice thing about having this stripped down so nicely is I can do wet sanding under running water, and it's great to work with. I don't have to keep anything clean and dry like I did on my Questar 7 restoration, where I didn't dare take apart the mechanism underneath here that had to do with the clock drive. It looked like a grandfather clock underneath there. And the factory said, don't you dare, because if you send it back in as a box of parts, we're going to charge you more than a new one, or something to that effect. So I limited myself there. One thing I'm noticing on this, anytime you're working with refinishing the base, there's a thin edge here. In this one, happily, it's not quite the thin knife edge that you can see on other models. It's maybe almost a millimeter or something wide for that surface here. That's good because it makes it a lot less fragile, but that's something you almost don't want to touch at all during refinishing. You don't want to really try and polish or sand that, because you'll round it over fast and it's going to look wrong and badly handled. It's pretty easy to take care of the rest here. That's just sandpaper and fingertips and polishing cloths. And so I'll be cleaning this up, and then we go through the process of putting it all back together. Here you can see this is all spread out, where earlier today it was an assembled telescope, and now it's a mess and fun.